This is my first opportunity to speak on behalf of our members. And I really couldn't think of a more exciting time to join the satellite industry. We're going through a major transformation and major innovation coming our way, coming your way, in order to hopefully help connect, the unconnected, and in particular as we move into the 5G era and probably beyond. So having listened to many of the honorable ministers so far, and I've heard about Kenya, Tanzania, Ghana earlier on this morning, I really want to be speaking today not just about how satellite communications can help deliver the promise of 5G and beyond, but also how crucial the role of satellite is in connecting the unconnected today, the value that it generates, and how we can really ensure that this value is not lost as we see increasing innovation, and in particular, as we don't want to create a 5G divide as we move along. So when we think of a connected society, which we've heard a lot about this morning, I think we've seen tremendous progress in bringing the world online in the last 2 decades. I started my life in telecoms, in the mobile industry in 2000, and to see where we've come, in the last 25 years, all technologies merged, it's quite an incredible journey. However, I have to say that it took a pandemic to bring the harsh realization of how connectivity is so vital for any country's economy and society to function, in times of crisis and beyond. So whilst the pandemic, we know today, has accelerated digital transformation by 7-fold in the last 3 years, we still have 2.7 billion people that are not online, whether it's due to access, to affordability that we discussed, or also simply to usability, people that don't know how to use, internet. But these people are at a real disadvantage as they remain cut off from the benefits of this digital transformation that is undergoing in other nations and run the risk, to remain further behind. In particular, many of them are being women, elderly, ethnic minorities and residents in, least developed or remote areas. So how does satellite come into play when we think of meaningful connectivity, and in particular 5G? We've heard a lot about my colleagues in the mobile industry, but I just want to give as well the perspective of what we can do from our side. In a world that is characterized by increasing data, mobility, vulnerability to threats and inequality, in particular, again, as we move into the next 5G and 6G world of tomorrow, the reach and resilience that satellites bring to telecom networks and connectivity overall are really its biggest assets. Fast and direct broadband, satellite broadband, is making a huge difference in some countries and some parts of the world. But so are B2B solutions enabled by the partnering with other providers to enable, for example, cellular backhaul and community Wi-Fi solutions. Most of all, satellite communications can deliver high-speed broadband in areas that would otherwise be unserved and enable meaningful connectivity across many nations, for instance, of the Commonwealth, be it for B2B services or B2C, not only directly improving access to information, access to communications, but also bringing real economic opportunities with new financial services, healthcare, education, and beyond. So, for example, there are communities in Africa that are literally going from 0 to 4G within weeks, thanks to satellite backhaul, and other communities where it's about 3G, because that is what works economically best in those communities, and where the penetration of 4G, for instance, is always quite still poor. We also see community hubs providing Wi-Fi connected to satellite broadband that are now increasingly common in isolated or remote villages, and it's often the only economic way to serve their residents. So when we hear about, all the comments we had this morning, all the observations, the concerns that governments have, in particular in the Commonwealth nations, when we think of internet access, more broadly, this is fundamental for education, for healthcare, for enabling small businesses to develop. We've seen a plethora of financial services being born in Africa and many other regions, but also unlocking the potential of 5G use cases, because without satellite, it will be impossible to achieve the levels of coverage and reliability that are required as we roll out 5G. And that really brings me to a point that is very dear to my heart and that I think we heard quite a bit this morning as well and just more recently is integration. Because this is not about just a claim, what I've just said until now, it's not the claim that satellite alone is going to provide the solution. And by the way, neither maybe mobile. Some of the greatest benefits that we've seen so far for citizen and most recent years are down to convergence between terrestrial and non-terrestrial networks. Space-based systems are increasingly being used to complement the terrestrial networks, whether it is not technically or economically feasible to build them. And this is really leading to an upsurge in demand for satellite. And the terrestrial sector is increasingly supporting convergence with many partnerships that we are seeing on the ground between mobile and satellite operators. Just to give an example, we heard the Minister of Tanzania, and there, for instance, Eutelsat and Vodacom have projects together. But also what we are seeing increasingly is terrestrial players that are investing directly in satellite. Last in date, Bharti Airtel investing in OneWeb. So we are really seeing a changing landscape, of around our technologies. And working together with terrestrial communications, companies have really, that are working and are coming together has really unlocked a number of ways in which satellite and mobile networks can complement each other. First, to address connectivity challenges in remote areas. Second, by facilitating seamless communications during mobility as we are on the move, supporting edge networking and or dense IoT traffic as we move into 5G. But also, most importantly, providing backup for vital emergency services as we are seeing a surge of natural disasters over and over again, and most recently with the tragic earthquake in Turkey. So this is just the start of this phase of innovation. And a further reason for success of these services and this evolution in satellite technology is also because we are seeing increasing capabilities within the satellite technology solutions themselves through, you see, high throughput satellites, through the LEOs. So we have increased capacity, we have addressed latency. So all of this innovation, if you want, is really bringing a lot of new solutions to the markets. But most importantly as well, there is progress being made to develop standards around non-terrestrial networks. For instance, the 3GPP Release 17 that is really supporting integration of NTNs in 5G and IoT services. And that will make it easier to integrate non-terrestrial and terrestrial networks. So all this speaks about the convergence of the telecom sectors and how we see the legacy divisions, I truly believe, between mobile, fixed, and satellite slowly dissolving. And it's also a public confirmation that the optimum solution for future connectivity really lies in a combination of technologies, leveraging the different strengths to reduce costs and collectively deliver higher resilience and greater availability for a much larger base and number of users around the world, no matter which region and which part of the world they live in. So to continue on this journey of meaningful connectivity and of rollout of 5G, we really need to ensure that we have the right policy environment. And I know John and David have touched upon this. Policies, access to spectrum, and funding initiatives must really be designed not to be only technology neutral, but also technology inclusive, so that we ensure that all users have access to broadband services that are the most cost-effective for their own circumstances, depending on which part of the world they live. We also need to ensure that satellite has continued access to sufficient spectrum at a national and regional level, in particular as the number of users of SATCOM broadband is really expected to double by 2030. If we look at, we expect a growth of 124% of users of SATCOM telemedicine services in Africa and the Middle East alone. 109% growth of users of SATCOM teleeducation services in Asia and the Pacific. So it isn't just about maintaining access to spectrum, but also to address the increased demand for satellite services that will require more spectrum. And in particular, as we are seeing as well, an increasing uptake of direct-to-handset satellite connectivity. And of course, again, as we are rolling out services linked to 5G. So when making decisions, we need to start with maybe asking, whether the spectrum is used, and we need to put in place a clear roadmap that looks critically at the uptake of technologies with an economic and strategic long-term view. And when I say we means governments and industry working hand in hand increasingly, because we cannot go in this race alone. So as Commonwealth countries consider the road ahead and the rollout of 5G, it is really important that they consider to use all of the technologies at their disposal to achieve their connectivity goals. Satellite is an important tool to connect the unconnected, but it is also an important part of 5G, particularly for rural areas. And again, as I said, we don't want to create a world where we're going to create a 5G divide. So this is really important. So to come to a close, I'd like to leave you with maybe 3 final thoughts. One is that we need to maintain our access to spectrum as we look towards WRC 23. This year is very important. It is important for Commonwealth countries to ensure that satellite services are supported and retain sufficient spectrum to deliver vital services to their citizens. Second, we need to help us to continue bridging the digital divide. Satellite here again plays a crucial role in widening the reach of all new technologies and solutions when there is no current outreach, and from enabling 5G to bringing basic education and healthcare resources to rural communities. And finally, help unlock the potential of convergence, but most importantly, what has been repeatedly again and again today said, it's really collaboration. So become champions of convergence solutions, harness the strength of all communications technology, but in particular, collaboration between public and private sector here is going to be vital if we want to make the success of rollout of 5G beyond and connecting the people we still need to connect today. I really truly believe, I come from the World Economic Forum, where for the 7 last years, I've worked with 20 industries, bringing them all together to advance digital transformation. There is no government, there is no industry that will succeed on their own on this journey. We're all in this together. And as I share the stage today with John and David, this is no longer about fighting for spectrum, but it's really about collaborating to find models, to find solutions that are economically viable for all of us, but ultimately that will benefit the citizens and that will really help us bring the 2.7 billion people that are still not online as soon as possible. So thank you very much.